The skull is a skeleton of the head, including the face. It is made up of 14 different bones, some paired and some single, to include the mandible. The cranium, on the other hand, is skull without its mandible, although this definition is not strictly adhered to. The upper part of a skull is called the calvaria, while the remainder is the facial skeleton. It is the exoskeleton of the brain. It protects the brain in a rigid cage. The skull can be described from the following views: anoma verticalis, anoma frontalis, anoma parietalis, and anoma basalis. The skull has a total of 14 individual bones, and the following are paired bones of the skull: temporal, parietal, zygomatic, mandible, maxilla, palatine bone, inferior nasal concha, lacrimal, nasal, and sutural bone. Others include the frontal bone, the ethmoid, the occipital, the hyoid, the sphenoid, and the vomer. The frontal bone was originally two, but was later joined by the metopic suture so that it exists in the adult as a single bone. It forms the forehead. It has an external part and an internal part, which forms the roof of the orbit. Its frontal surface forms two frontal tuberosities, which are called bursae. The supratrochlear and supraorbital margins are placed at the junction between its external and the orbital parts. Parietal bones are paired. They cover the parietal cortex on the sides of the cranium. They possess two surfaces: external surface and internal surface. Temporal bones are paired and found at the sides of the cranium, below the parietal. The temporal bone has the following distinct parts: a squamous temporal part, a petromastoid part, which is divided into a petrous temporal, and a mastoid part. The occipital bone forms the base and back of the cranium. It encloses the foramen magnum. It has the following parts: a squamous part, a basilar part, and lateral or condylar parts. The sphenoid bone is single and internal, although a small portion, which is the greater wing and the pterygoid process, appears at the sides and base of the skull. It has the following parts: a body of a sphenoid, a greater wing of a sphenoid, and lesser wing of a sphenoid. The pterygoid process. This is further divided into two parts: a lateral pterygoid plate and medial pterygoid plate. The medial pterygoid plate carries the pterygoid hamulus. The sphenoid concha is right inside the bone. The ethmoid bone is single and placed internal, although it projects part of its lateral surface externally. It has three main parts: a cremiform plate of the ethmoid, the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid. This is found at the upper part of the nasal septum, and the ethmoid labyrinth, which are on the lateral aspects of the nasal cavity. These carry anterior, posterior, and middle ethmoidal ear cells. They also are provided with two processes called the superior and middle nasal concha. A crista galli projects from its perpendicular plate together with two alar processes. The zygomatic bone, which is paired, forms the prominence of the cheek. It takes part in the formation of the following parts of the skull: the orbit, the infratemporal fossa, and the zygomatic arch. The maxilla is the bone of the upper jaw. It has left and right sides, which are fused at the middle. It is next in size to the mandible in the whole skull. It forms the major part of the roof of the buccal cavity, assisted by the palatine bone posteriorly. The mandible is the bone of the lower jaw. It is single, having been fused in embryological development, leading to the formation of a false symphysis called the symphysis mentae between the two halves of the mandible. The mandible is the largest and the strongest of the bones of the skull. It has a curved body with two processes. The body carries a mental tubercle on the side of the symphysis mentae and has an internal oblique mylohyoid line. The mandible has two processes. a collinoid process which has the head of the mandible, and a coronoid process which provides attachment for the temporalis. The vomer is a single bone providing the bony aspect of the nasal septum posteriorly. It is flat and thin bone and forms a shape similar to that of trapezium. It articulates inferiorly with the maxilla and palatine bones, and superiorly with the septal cartilage on the anterior aspect, with ethmoid at the middle and with the sphenoid posteriorly. The palatine bones are paired, and they are divided into two parts: a horizontal plate and a perpendicular plate. Nasal bones are paired. They are variable in size. They join each other at the bridge of the nose across the midline. They articulate with the frontal process of the maxilla. Lacrimal bones are paired. Small bones are the medial margins of the orbit. They are smallest of the bones of the skull. The inferior nasal concha are paired and found at the lateral margin of the nasal walls, complementing the middle and superior nasal conchae, which are the processes of ethmoidal masses. They articulate with the maxilla, lacrimal bone, and ethmoid.